Welcome to a very special panel discussion brought to you by Hotel Designs. Today, we're in Manchester, ahead of tonight's party, Meet Up North. We're here today with three leading interior designers to understand and explore the topic of design development in the North. If you want more content like this, head over to hoteldesigns.net. So welcome guys to our panel discussion here at Whitworth Lock. We're here in Manchester for Meet Up North. The theme for tonight is design development in the North. We found you guys as our industry experts to really discuss this topic. So I guess you could just start by introducing yourself. Lucy, do you want to start?
I'm Lucy. I own No Tints. I'm a creative director and founder of No Tints. We've been going for 15 years and we're based here in Manchester.
Amazing. And Alex as Lock Hotels.
Yes, Alex Bamlyons, head of design at Eden, and one of our brands is Lock Hotels.
Amazing. And John, hi.
John Williams, founding director at Space Invader, and we're also based here in Manchester, and we're interior designers for commercial and hospitality.
Fantastic. Well, welcome, guys. I think I want to start by just addressing the elephant in the room. Like, is it fair to say that there's always been a divide between north, south in terms of design? Is that always going to be the case, or do you think those boundaries are being smudged out somewhat?
I'd say, the north-south divide exists. It does exist, it's just a fact. In terms of the economy and other factors. In the design world, I don't know, it's not something that's so prevalent. The biggest thing that affects the design and architecture community is probably brain drain. So the fact that talented people from the north, from northern cities, are often drawn to London.
I think there is definitely something, it's probably political, or there's probably a little bit cultural or something between north and south, and probably historical. From a design perspective, I don't think there is. We've got projects all around the country. I think if you look at British design from and what that represents on a global stage, everybody is very conscious of how good our design language is.
Yeah,
and I think that's probably what unites the north and south.
And Lucy, you were born and bred in Surrey and moved up to Manchester. Would you say design's changed since that transition, or has it always been the same?
Yeah, I think I spent probably the first 10 years of being in Manchester looking to go back to London. That's where all the creatives were. But actually, living and starting a business here and actually developing a design business here and realising what the community is up here, I'm very, very happy to have stayed. I think, like you said, it's blurred now. Lots of our projects are in London. Lots of London agencies are based up here in terms of the hospitality products that are moving around the country. So I don't think there's so much of a divide anymore.
Was that a risk at the time to move up here in terms of business development in design up here?
No, I think it was actually quite practical. I think I always think now when I go back to London, I try and arrange meetings here, and here, and I forget actually how huge London is. Actually, it's 5-6 cities within one, and actually the nice thing that you have in Manchester is a presence. You have the kind of architecture designers, your hospitality clients. You can walk from meeting to meeting, North Manchester to South Manchester. It's easy to kind of control, and I guess to have a bit of a voice up here and to be known up here. I think you can be quite a little fish in a big pond in London.
Yeah, and would you say that there's, I don't know, maybe more space, more opportunity to kind of flex your design muscles in outside of London? And if there is, have you got any examples of how, your work has sort of been amplified? John, perhaps the project you're working on in Cheshire is really interesting, the details. Chester, sorry.
That particular project you're talking about is a hotel in a historical building, and I think you get quite a lot of that in northern cities. So if you think, obviously Manchester's got a lot of kind of warehouse kind of buildings, and then you've got Liverpool with a sort of Dockland and sort of Baltic Triangle. And this building is actually the Rose, which is sort of old Victorian terraces, if you like. But they've got two levels. So there's a ground floor street level, which is sort of retail, but there's sort of almost like a podium level. So our client has actually sort of bought 4 of these in a row. That's a really special project. It's a historical building. You've got a guy that sort of, is a local developer that's actually bought it, that lives there, that loves it, that knows it. It's not a fund, it's not an outside developer. And he's got real ambition, and you've got this building where you've got to do it justice. You've got to do something amazing with it. Otherwise, you've not really quite done your job as a developer and as a designer. So that, for me, is what's special about probably northern cities. Those projects like that still come up, that you can be really aspirational with.
And I guess talking about heritage buildings, we're here in Whitworth Lock, which is such an interesting and unique building, really. Having had a tour, no room is the same.
No, absolute
talk to us about that.
It's an incredible privilege, as John said. working with historical buildings in any city, you've got incredible canvas to work with. You know, to have this architectural backdrop as a designer is a gift. On the downside, of course, you know, historical buildings are difficult to plan for, but it's totally worth it. I think it's one of the, you know, some of my favourite locks, for example, are the ones that happen to be in historical buildings, just because I think everyone loves that juxtaposition of the old with the new. I think all designers, all creative people, of course we do new things, but we love having the opportunity to work with old things as well. Especially, you know, by definition, if they've survived 200 years, they're extremely high quality, you know, they were built to last, and there's just a huge amount of inspiration to take from it.
Yeah, you have to work hard to get a design narrative out of a new build, don't you? You really have to pump it back. So when you're gifted it, whilst it's not the easiest thing to always work with, like there's something there, there's a thread to go for.
A blessing and a curse, absolutely. And sometimes we do adaptive reuse, and sometimes you get an absolute rotter. It's just some bland 60s office block that we're trying to convert into a hotel. You're hanging on desperately. It's like, oh, there might be something nice when we pull off that tile. No, absolutely not.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, so you know, I mean, grass is always green. Obviously, the nice thing about a new build is you can plan it in a nice, efficient way, and it can be all very. You can plan very well, and you get fewer surprises on site. But where's the fun in that?
Lucy, I just want to talk about what you've done with the F&B as well as the gym, because I find that fascinating. For me, I can kind of get a glimpse of the gym in the F&B, and it's a really nice balance and a blend to merge together. I'm just wondering, like, when did that sort of come about in your head? That
So this was our second Foundation Coffee House. So we launched Foundation Coffee House up in the Northern Quarter. The foundation that we have here was kind of designed in tandem with what Lock were doing in terms of what that vibe would be. So it's a little bit more refined than the Northern Quarter. But again, it's a small space, but it's doing something interesting within that. So functional fitness, the weights, the idea that it kind of fits together, and then trying to like bring that, the trend of the kind of the colours and the materiality within to a gym environment to make it feel like it's a lifestyle. So obviously what you guys have done here in the rooms is exceptional. It's very lifestyle driven, you know, it's all about kind of how you feel in the space, and that's really what we wanted the gyms to feel like. So yeah, that's kind of where we approached that.
Extremely successful. The gym that No Chins did here was the first. But now that's basically become our brand standard. So unlike most aspects of locks, they're usually designed from scratch every time. Gyms are actually one of the things that we try to keep very consistent, just because guests seem to appreciate knowing what they're going to get when they go from lock to lock. So yeah, it was by far the most successful gym we'd ever done. The guys did an amazing job, and now we roll them out across the whole portfolio.
Yeah, and I guess by creating that design DNA, you are, you know, creating that link between all the properties. Yeah. Do you expect that to evolve in terms of like other brands and the competition to get even more heightened in that respect, in terms of like, you know, brands sort of branching out into new territories, and there to be less of a change in terms of the look and feel from one property to another?
Well, it's a very difficult thing for any brand that's trying to scale. Especially, you want to start off with the idea, similar to Lock, that you want to have a unique design for every outlet, whether it's a restaurant or a hotel, and you want it to be different every time. Now, that's amazing, but it's difficult. It's in direct conflict with the demands of scale, which is there's huge temptation and pressure to standardise, because of course that allows you to just roll things out. You're not reinventing the wheel every time. You're not making silly mistakes. And I can see other brands, you know, I know other brands have started off on that trajectory and have sort of succumbed to that temptation. It's that golden thread we talk about a lot. Like, you want to have a level of enough continuity. There's a golden thread that connects all the locks, but they've got to be unique and different, and a different guest experience every time. And it's not easy, you know. That is, and
that's the challenge.
And we probably don't always get it right, you know, as we move from lock to lock. Sometimes we keep that golden thread intact. Sometimes it might be broken, but hey, you know, that's the pitfall of doing things the way we do it. But we wouldn't do it any other way.
But it comes at a cost. It comes at a price. That, you know, if you're essentially reinventing the wheel every time.
Oh, it's horribly inefficient.
That said, though, I think that's a draw to Lock, isn't it? It's like, you can have stayed in one of the ones in London, but you want to go and try the other four because you want to sit on the different sofa, you want to try the different F&B experience from someone from a design point of view. If I've stayed in a mama shelter, I've stayed in a mama shelter. It's the same in Paris, it's the same in Istanbul. I haven't been to the one in Shoreditch. I expect it's fairly similar. With Lock, it's like, well, you know, I've stayed at Broken Wharf, now I want to go and stay at this one, I want the one in Dalston. Like, there's an excitement to the stay, and I think that's how you can keep your yielding high, isn't it? Because people are prepared to pay a little bit more.
In fact, you know, our first Lock was in London, our second one was Edinburgh. brand was in Manchester.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you know, we just determined that we weren't going to be one of those brands who took a big city concept and just moved it, just sort of plunked it around, just not in our DNA. You know, we wanted to create something that was very specific to Manchester when we came here.
And it still stand out, like in terms of like Manchester hospitality offering, like it's still probably the standout hotel in terms of going somewhere that's
You say that to
No, it is.
There's not many of them.
Let's look at this from a developer's perspective. So obviously property in the north is cheaper. So I kind of really want to know from a designer's perspective, how does that impact the project and the budget?
I think it's two sides of the same coin. On the one hand, you can get more for your money when you initially purchase a site or a property. So this is a great example. We could not justify spending or buying a property like this in central London. So coming up north, you get these opportunities because the purchase price is lower. But on the other side of the coin, the revenues, the projected revenues are lower as well. So our ADRs are lower. You know, the return on investment is lower, and therefore there's pressure on budgets. And lower budgets aren't necessarily a bad thing. I think obviously there's red lines that you can't go below, and sometimes we can make it work. Sometimes it's just, look, guys, we can't deliver a lot for half the price that we did.
Yeah.
For. It's just impossible.
I want to talk about workspace design. I don't really want to go too far because I want you to really explain, Lucy, the office is dead concept that you had, because I think it's super relevant to today, and the fact that you had that idea before the pandemic.
So we were asked by Orange Box down in London to help them with Clerkenwell 2020 to look at kind of the future of workspace, what's tomorrow's workspace looking to be. And really when we kind of looked into it, we were looking at this kind of nomadic kind of experience that people were having. It's like we always had this conventional idea that people come into the office to do their work, and then on the way home or at the weekend, or, you know, this is where all these wonderful ideas come, and that's where the creativity is. And it was wrong. Actually, what we've realised from the pandemic is people do their work at home. They do it at a time that suits them. If they've got children, that's in the evening or early in the morning, or, you know, maybe between a wash and a lunchbox. But what really they were missing is this idea of collaboration. They come into the workspace to collaborate, to generate ideas, to workshop. So we kind of came up with this concept in February 2020, and we called it The Office is Dead. And we designed these huge kind of graphics all over the place, big flags, the office is dead, the office is dead. It was meant to like really kind of create the spirit of activism. And then we presented in February, and then in March, Boris Johnson went on the telly and went, everyone go home now on a global, a UK-wide shutdown. And then 6 months later, like headlines everywhere, you know, the Telegraph, Architectural Journal, the office is dead, the office is dead. They asked us to come back in. We're launching on Monday for Clerkenwell. And actually what we designed was relevant. I think COVID had accelerated it, so it was no longer tomorrow's workspace, it's today's workspace. The terminology was distasteful. The office is dead isn't appropriate, so we've renamed it Rewilding the Office. You're kind of looking at the mental health over the last couple of years, and actually what people have really missed is this like physical and this human connection. So bringing people into the workspace to have that, but allowing people the autonomy to work in a way that works for them. It doesn't need to be 9 to 5 in a box. They just need to get their work done. So it was quite interesting. So we're going to go and obviously present that to Clerkenwell on Monday. Rewilding the office, not the office is dead.
But it's interesting, isn't it? And centering that back to hotels, I mean, Northerners are very friendly, and, you know, collaboration becomes easy in that respect. And I mean, just walking around the co-working spaces here, you can tell that there's that energy being shared between people. Why has it taken until now for us to kind of utilise that in public areas? Is it the case of, like, you know, having to battle the fact that the revenue generating aspect of it?
Again, from Locke's perspective, co-working is kind of it's the linchpin in our front of house spaces. It might not generate much money, but it activates space, it keeps it busy during the day, creates a local amenity for the local community, which is so important to us. We always say we're designing for the locals, not for our guests. Because if we create an amazing space that the locals want to use, the guests will benefit. So
really it's about looking at the value as opposed to the money coming in.
Exactly.
And then the awareness, I guess, that can be spread through word of mouth.
Yeah, and there's something, and it's quite intangible, it's hard to quantify, but there's something about having activated ground floor spaces. Everyone knows this. For some reason, people will pay more for your hotel rooms. And we know that if we create a buzzy place, which is genuinely considered cool in that vicinity, in that micro location,
I think also it makes the private areas, the guest rooms, feel more premium, maybe, because that's your own private space, and there's a real contrast between those areas.
Absolutely. In fact, when we brief designers, we always talk about the social context for them to look at. And that's what we mean by that is the different thresholds as you move through our spaces. and it's the threshold between the street and our public areas, so truly public, and then our public areas. As you move through to things like guest laundry, sort of quasi private spaces, and then all the way through to your room, which is a truly private, complete your own space. But by thinking each one of those thresholds, exactly how you want someone to feel or how you want them to transition, we find amazing results.
They want to feel like locals. They want to
Yeah.
go, you go to New York and you go into like a hotel and all the New Yorkers there, you feel like a New Yorker. You go to, I don't know, wherever it is, Paris, and all the Parisians there, you feel like a Parisian. Like, you want to feel that you're integrated immediately within that community. So by activating a ground space, and you have like Soho House or like the Ace Hotel did it, you're bringing in the creators and the demographic from that area. So straight away you're dropping in, straight away you're kind of creating these serendipity moments where you might actually bump into somebody that you're going to, start something with, like a conversation, a career, a date, whatever it is. Like, you're creating this kind of community for people.
It's so interesting
you
as
don't
well.
want to go into a cold environment where everyone's like, oh, hello, Mrs. Goddard.
If you concentrate on creating an environment where people can do what they want to do, and they feel free and liberated to do whatever they need to do, whether it's working or playing or whatever, the sort of monetization and the revenue, that'll come. You've got to focus on what people actually really want, not to try and commoditize them immediately, to just create the environment that they want to be in.
So let's talk about local and British manufacturing. Why is it so important to keep British manufacturing alive within the projects that you're working on?
It's great to use local suppliers, as simple as that.
Is that realistic as well?
Yeah,
with the budgets you've got?
it's not everything. It's not, there's certainly textiles, there's a lot of textiles coming. There's new hay carpets with new hay, which is really close. Yeah, I think on any project you've got to aspire, and I'm sure you do, Lucy, I'm sure you do, to use as much as local product as you possibly can. And we are blessed here in the north that there are lots of, so the industrious past that is still, it's reinvented, but it's still very much alive and kicking.
It's a win-win, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a win on so many levels. It's supporting local economy, which is great. It's tapping into local artisans who will only bring value to what you're trying to do as a designer. It's, of course, reducing supply chains. It reduces construction risk. It's better for the environment because there's fewer transport costs.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's all in all, it's a great thing. I think the only thing that blocks it happening more is the amount of manufacturing that still exists in the UK, which of course is greatly diminished from the heyday of places like Manchester, but also the cost. I think we, as designers, and in our case as developers as well, we do have a responsibility to not allow those relationships and the use of local manufacturers to fall by the wayside. The guests care about that. We know that. We know our guests actually care about those subjects. It's quite difficult to work out exactly how to tell them. Because you don't want to be too in your face. You don't want to be shouting too loud about it. There's ways to do it, but it's finding that balance. You want to be proud of those little details and your connection to local manufacturers. But of course, you don't want to bore guests half to death.
I think we have a lot more control as well. I mean, certainly for the last year, bringing things in from Europe has been a minefield. I mean, things that were 4 to 6 weeks can be 16 weeks. You've got COVID stopping this, and then it's getting into the UK. It's completely unpredictable, and it's really hard when you're working with kind of live projects.
But that is moving the needle in a positive direction in terms of British manufacturing. You circumvent all those issues if it's made down the road. But again,
it's a shame it has to take that. But actually,
and there is still a paucity.
But then there is a lack of when you look at as you're mentioning,
capacity, isn't it? How much can you actually produce?
Yeah, and I guarantee if every hospitality project in the UK all tried to buy from British manufacturers, I guarantee there's no capacity for that.
I quite like to end this conclusion how I seem to end every conclusion by talking about collaboration. So I chaired a panel recently where the designers said that there's less emphasis on the ownership of a product or a project as such, and more kind of, there's a collaborative approach to many of the solutions that you see. Would you say this is driving design forward and evolving? Are you seeing this in your project?
Collaboration is everything. Hands up, I wish I collaborated with more interior designers, to be honest. We collaborate with a lot of architects up and down the country, and it's great, and I quite like that relationship. But certainly, in my own studio, the best idea always wins, but it's never one person that has one idea. Exactly. Ideas are layered. When you're in a design review and you're talking about things, it grows and grows and grows into one thing. So I think collaboration is really everything when you...
I think with your team as well, if someone's got an idea and then there's one person sort of taking the credit, if you like, or sort of rumbling with it, if it's sort of built as a team effort, that just creates great morale between everyone, better work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd say the people clamouring for credit or ownership of ideas is ridiculous. I mean, in any creative environment, as any creative knows, that is just simply what you need for creativity is ideas flying around and people being very receptive to listen to what other people have to say. And having humility as a designer to know that you're not you're not the only person who has the right to have a good idea. There's great people around you, not just other people in your team. It's it can be. We're talking about working with manufacturers. I mean, we love collaboration at Lock, and again, something we do very inefficiently, which is that we have multiple designers on the same projects. And I mean, it blurs the line between authorship and ownership of ideas, but the results are always positive.
Yeah, and I think what we're finding now as well, the clients bring ideas too. So it's no longer like we're the design studio, here's your brief, this is your response. It's like, well, we'll always push the brief a little bit further than they're comfortable with, and they will always pull it back, but we always like to think we've just moved them a little bit further than they would have without us. But there's brand, there's narrative, there's copywriters, there's manufacturers, there's the clients, and then there's the other people within the team. So actually, like as you say, it's almost like a tussle. What's the brief? What's the response? What are the other responses? And like
how far can we push it?
Yeah, where we're gonna end up on this like little tug of war. So.
Well, it creates the relationship, I guess, as well. Thank you so much for today. Honestly, it's been so lovely to talk to you. I can't wait to see your Dead Ambitious hotel. I can't wait to see what you unveil at Clerkenwell Design Week. And Alex, well, Locks popping up all over the place. I'm sure we'll be checking in very soon.
Always have an invite.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much.